Think cooking is complicated? Try making a 5-course meal with nothing but rocks and raw meat. Welcome to my channel. We think cooking is complicated today. Soufflés, Michelin stars, molecular gastronomy. But compared to prehistoric humans, we have it easy. They had no kitchens, no recipes, no spatulas, and yet, they invented the first real cuisine. In the beginning, our hominid ancestors got their protein from meat, but that meant hours spent chewing and gnawing on tough, meaty fibers. Not exactly a gourmet experience. They also ate roots and nuts, but that meant swallowing dirt and small pebbles along with it. Most of the calories in these foods were locked up inside cells made of cellulose and chitin, which are really hard to break down. Their jaws and teeth weren't built for the job. So eating was a huge time investment. And to make things worse, there was no fridge, so every meal could be a gamble with parasites. Now, not all ancient diets were like this. Some primates that live on fruit spend far more time looking for food than actually eating it. But most early hominids got their calories from plants and spent a lot of time doing the dishes, too. One day, some meat scraps were left too close to a fire and got burnt. Maybe a careless cook had meant to toss them, but instead got distracted by a mammoth stampede or a saber-toothed tiger stampede. Either way, when they returned, they found something new, meat that was soft enough to chew without help from the jaws of life. This would have been a lucky break for any early hominid who stumbled upon it, because meat is loaded with calories and nutrients. And cooked meat was much easier to digest, so it gave our ancestors more energy for less time spent chewing. After a while, people started roasting tubers, too. At first, these would have been hard as bricks, but after hours by the fire, they became soft and sweet. They even started cracking nuts with stones, another great source of calories. So the hominids with the biggest brains quickly learned to become the biggest foodies. This wasn't the end of the food fight, though. Now that our ancestors were hanging around fire a lot more, there were more opportunities for disaster. There was always the risk of getting burned, like when you leave the house and forget if you locked the front door. And fire brought new dangers, smoke inhalation, and the risk of setting your cave on fire. But the benefits outweighed the risks. Fire was the first kitchen, the first step toward restaurant-style dining, and not everyone got invited to the dinner. For example, Homo erectus was one of the first hominids to regularly use fire. They hunted and gathered food and occasionally cooked it over a flame. In other words, they were basically YouTubers, but they also lived 2 million years ago. That's long before Homo sapiens even existed. For a long time, we don't see evidence that our ancestors were using fire to cook. Maybe they were picking up roasted leftovers from the previous night's campfire, but that's about it. It's only after Homo sapiens evolved in Africa that we start seeing evidence of regular cooking. And we still don't know exactly how long this took. Some scientists estimate that cooking might have only been invented within the last 100,000 years. Others say our ancestors were cooking up a storm as far back as 500,000 years ago. But either way, it happened recently in the blink of an eye, at least compared to the rest of human history. But cooking wasn't just convenient. It changed us physically and cognitively. See, the act of cooking itself takes a lot of effort. Our ancestors probably used a lot of energy keeping fires going and gathering ingredients. But the payoff was worth it. Meat, tubers, and nuts were packed with calories and nutrients, so they provided a lot of energy. And it was way easier to digest. This meant that our ancestors could spend less time chewing and more time thinking, which is why our brains got bigger and our jaws got smaller. So thanks, Mom and Dad, for all those family dinners. You may not have had the latest gadgets or the fanciest restaurant, but you gave me the gift of big dreams and a small grill bill. Cooking changed everything. It gave us more than just food. It brought us together. It sparked creativity and innovation. It turned survival into a society, hunger into a feast. This is the story of the first cooks, the prehistoric chefs who discovered the power of fire and the magic of flavor. Before the first farmers, before the first cities, there were these intrepid souls who dared to cook their food, experiment with new tastes and techniques, and ultimately change the course of human history. They are the true pioneers of our culinary heritage. It all started when our ancestors learned to control fire, perhaps by accident, perhaps through sheer curiosity. With fire came creativity. Stones became knives, bones became spoons, and who knows, maybe they even discovered flavor enhancers in ash or herbs tossed into the fire. The first experiments in gastronomy. As the sun set and the stars came out, they gathered around the flickering flames, sharing their bounty and swapping stories. And so, around the fire, the first communal dining experience was born. It was a social revolution. Meals were no longer a solitary affair. They became a time for bringing people together, for building relationships and forging alliances. The first dining table, a circle of stone and flame, where the raw materials of survival were transformed into the feast of community. And from this humble beginning, everything changed. Society flourished, agriculture developed, and eventually civilization as we know it took off. But what really set our species apart from all the other animals? What allowed us to build great cities and empires and create works of art and literature that have echoed through the ages? It was our ability to innovate, to take something simple and transform it into something extraordinary. These prehistoric chefs were the first innovators of cuisine, the first to experiment with new ingredients and cooking techniques. They were the inventors of the stew, the roaster, the griller, the first to discover the joys of fermented foods, the first to create something new from something old. They were the masters of flavor, texture, and presentation, the alchemists of the kitchen, and they did it all without any fancy equipment or technology, just a little bit of know-how and a lot of heart. And that ingenuity echoes today. Every Michelin star dish, every recipe passed down from generation to generation, every bite of food that brings back a flood of memories is a continuation of the prehistoric chef's journey, a journey that began with hunger and led to an extraordinary adventure of discovery. So the next time you sit down to a meal, remember, it began with sparks, stones, and survival. The original chefs didn't just feed us, they made us human. I'm Here for the Channel. Our series, The Story of, explores how everyday things came to be. How did pizza get invented? What's the real story behind French fries? To find out more about the fascinating beginnings of everything, follow our channel.